So, hey everyone, welcome back to the third of our Audience of One series here. And so far we've been blown away with everybody tuning in every Sunday night for the last few weeks. Tonight we're up in the game. We're bringing in the heavy hitters. We're bringing in some unbelievable guys who have got some incredible stories to share about living for an audience of one in their everyday life. First of all, I want to introduce you to a couple of my friends. First up, I've got a good buddy on tonight, Philip, or we're going to call him Mitch. He's got a younger brother called Mitch who's tried to trademark that name, but for tonight we're going to steal it off him because his name's Mitchell too. But Philip heads up Sports Chaplaincy here in Northern Ireland. He's played football before in the past for a few good teams. He's travelled the world because he loves football and he does some amazing things. So Philip, we want to welcome you here tonight. Come on in and tell us. Say hi to the guys and give us a wee bit of intro about you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to have been invited on to your little chat show tonight, and I know I'm in wonderful company with Linvoy. So, I mean, my background is obviously, as Spud has said, I was in football. I've had the privilege of playing for some of the top clubs in Northern Ireland, and played with a lot of good players and managers, and again, I've had the privilege of working in the sporting goods industry for a long time. I was with Umbro for 15 years, and then in recent years I've worked across a number of different streams in sport. I worked with an organisation in America where we looked after international football projects. So I've had the privilege of looking after them in the southern part of Europe. And then in the last few years, again, alongside my younger brother Keith, we then took on the role of coordinating sports chaplaincy in Northern Ireland, which is grown to be increasingly more and more exciting. And then I did some work for the Irish CFA as well. So again, I've just been blessed to be involved in sport. I'm married, I got 3 boys who all follow Jesus and all love sport as well. So that's me.
Amazing, mate. Delighted to have you here. And then we want to get our special guest on tonight. We want to welcome Linvoy. Linvoy Primus, MBE, to give him his full title. We're delighted to have you, Linvoy. I know you and I go way back. How are you, brother? How's things with you? Say hi to everyone.
Yeah, hi everyone. Lovely to be on with you, Spud. What can I say? So, played football for a little while. For most of my teenage and through the 20s into my early 30s. Played in all 4 divisions in the UK. Retired in 2010. Started to do some charity work. I started a charity in 2003, but continued to do that after I retired. And then in 2013, I started to work for an organisation called Christians in Sport. And my role is to support footballers up and down the country on their journey of faith. And I stepped down recently, but I was also a trustee to Sports Chaplaincy. So Phil, some of the decisions we made a couple of years ago, you're probably feeling the effects of now. So hopefully they're positive.
All in a good way.
How's everything been for you guys, both with lockdown and everything going on in the world at the moment? How's things for you being Linvoy?
Yeah, interesting to be fair, because I've got my wife and my youngest son at home. So, you know, the first few weeks were a little bit, it's like holiday mode. I was still able to continue working and do what I needed to do because I could do it over Zoom calls or FaceTime and things like that. But the intensity really ramped up. So that was a bit of a struggle at first. But I think after the first few weeks of that holiday feel sort of going, I think there was a little period where it was a bit flat, because it was, you know, you were confined, even though the weather was lovely, you were confined to a certain space most of the time. So there was a little flat period. But then once we adapted, you know, I think everybody cleared their garages, done DIY. You know, I definitely didn't do any DIY because my thing stands for demolition. You know, not do it yourself. Mine's definitely demolition. So we've been okay. My daughter's still in America, She wasn't able to come back, but she just graduated. All her work went online. And my oldest son, he's a tree surgeon, so it didn't really affect him work-wise. He was able to continue working. So yeah, it's been okay. It's been okay. There's a couple of bumps, but if there's not, if everyone hasn't had those little bumps, I'd be surprised. So yeah, so overall though, quite positive.
Yeah, I seen a guy put out on Twitter from the Oxford English Dictionary. He said, "We've never seen such unprecedented use of the word unprecedented."
No.
It's unprecedented.
No. You know what it sounds like? You're going to take the president down, unpresident him, that's what it sounds like, isn't it?
Well, Philip, what about for you and everything you're involved with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Spud, the reality is for most people, I think unless you've been directly involved with the virus and you've had, a person in your family who's went through it, or you've lost someone. So there's obviously been the bereavement piece for people, and obviously then not being able to say goodbye to people. Of course, we shouldn't forget that. Those are all like tragic circumstances that affected so many people. I mean, personally for me, it's been an inconvenience, and in truth, no more than that, because where you stop doing some of the things you were doing, you take up the silver linings of spending more time with your family, and we've been blessed with some good weather. But on the sports chaplaincy side, we realised there was a crisis within sport, that sport had stopped, and it stopped indefinitely, and that the sporting community were a little bit of a loss, and people at the top end of organisations and national governing bodies were in unprecedented, use that word again, territory. So we've like everyone else, we've used the technical resources at hand. We've connected in with all of our chaplains. Our chaplains are doing that similarly with their clubs, and we're making our services available to people throughout all this time. We're cheering on the sporting community, who have been, I think, always take a pretty good lead in times like this, in terms of wanting to help. They wanted to see what they could do from a charitable point of view to help the NHS and key workers. So all of those things have been going on, and we're, we've been talking to people at the top of organisations and asking them, what can we be praying for? How can we be of practical help? What do we think the new norm might look like going forward? So we've been at the forefront of those conversations, and in many cases, we found that our chaplains are of even greater need than they are in the pre-COVID-19.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things we first all missed was probably sports, and now it seems to be sports is the one key thing that is kind of being turned back on again, or starting back up again, that everyone's turning to for that little bit of normality and hope that things can change. How have you found that change with what you're doing, Philip, as things start to kick back up again and conversations begin to take place?
Yeah, I think what we're realizing is that the environment that people are going to go into, sport will start again, and the competitive nature of sport will start again, and the socializing will start again, but it may well be a different environment that happens in. Players turning up to training, it may be they're turning up to training and getting out of the car, going on the training field, a lot of socially distancing training, and then getting back in their car and disappearing. And then match day is clearly going to look different for a while as well. So we're trying to understand what that environment's going to look like, Spot. So some of it is still an unknown. There's still some uncertainty around that. But again, by at least talking to the key stakeholders, then, our chaplains are at least well prepared for that, and are ready to step in to be, just to be available. And again, what we don't know there, Spot, is in every environment, they'll clearly want to limit the amount of people who are around the training environment, who will want to limit people around match day environment, and that's totally fine. We do not want to be getting in the way, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're still connected in, whether that maybe is initially electronically, and then hopefully at some point then in terms of face-to-face, so that we can just be around our players and our staff, and all the administrative people, the volunteers, and all the wonderful people who make up sporting clubs, because we don't know all their little journeys they've been on through COVID-19. Some will have had bereavement loss, some will have had some unemployment is going to be an issue. Spud, we can't get away from that, and it's going to be an issue in sport. And so we don't know maybe all the little journeys they've been on. So just being around and being able to have a safe place for people to talk and help them through the next phase and what's going on in their lives, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linvoy, before we get to some of your own personal story, what was your thoughts on, when the whole pandemic hit and, the world was shaking? It seems to be the media and politicians included seem to go after some of the guys, the top players, the top sports players, all because of their income and the fear of the unknown of what was about to happen. And then it's now almost come full circle in this past week where we've seen the incredible Marcus Rashford just in 24 hours almost completely change the whole government policy on free school meals for kids throughout the whole of the summer. What was having been in the Premier League and played at the top level, what was your thinking and thoughts on some of that?
Yeah, I think, early on, when before the lockdown and everything like that, I was probably a little bit blasé in regards to what it looked like and what it could be, because it was still in France. It hadn't quite crossed to England, and then in my head I was thinking, well, if there was no label to it, if you get a cough, sneeze, or cold, it would be seasonal, and it was expected. But once lockdown came, and I think the graphic that really spoke to me was when it showed that one person could infect 3, and then 3 could infect, and that really hit home to me. And then I was in probably 3 weeks after the lockdown, my uncle got taken into hospital with corona, and his whole household had it as well, just symptoms and stuff like that. And an ex-pro that I know who's very healthy, looks after himself very well, he had it as well. Both of them recovered, but I remember speaking to my uncle a week after he'd been out of hospital. He'd been in hospital maybe 3 weeks, so it was a month of him having it, and then a week out. And I spoke to him, done a video call with him, and he was speaking away, and I was looking at him, and he said, "Lynn, I feel so much better than I did last week." And I thought, my days, if you think you look good now, you must have looked really bad the last few weeks. But for the 2 people that I know, and them to come through it, what a blessing. And with it just, I think my whole thought process has been, Lord, you knew this was coming. It's no surprise, but we have personally, I and us as a family, we need to make sure that we're doing the right things that the government are saying. So on that level, bit of skepticism at first, but then a real reality check. And in regards to the players, the focus on players to do more in terms of early on what Matt Hancock said, I think. Footballers will always be an easy target, and the thing is, and what I liked about Marcus Rashford's thing this week, he raised, not him personally, but just facilitated raising of £20 million. I don't think I saw that in the paper once before the accusations came about players not doing enough. And and I could name 100 players who have got charities, who support charities, who do a lot that goes unheard because they don't want the limelight for it. They just want to get on and do because they want to give something back. So I think it's a cheap shot. I think it was a cheap shot in terms of that for the players. And Gordon Taylor, the PFA chairman, was really good when he said, well, players can take pay cuts, but that affects the tax that comes into the government as well. And and that in itself, because the thing for me, because it was about money, there was just a sense of, was there a bit of jealousy? Was there a bit of, let's throw mud that way because it takes pressure off of what's going on here? So I thought it was a cheap shot, but players are doing good things, and one day, articles about players doing good things will be more popular than, you know, someone buying a house that can afford to buy a house for their parents and, you know, not get told off for it. So you know, so I think that there'll be more positive press about what players do.
So Linvoy, take us through the beginning of you and your football career, and how you ended up being in the Premier League, winning the FA Cup. You know, how did it all begin for you?
Oh, it's such a long time ago, Spud. It feels like a dream. So when I was 14, I'd only started playing 11-side football 2 years before, but started playing for a Sunday team. 14, got scouted by Charlton. Was now part of what they call the academy system. Back then, it was Centre of Excellence and YTS schemes and things like that. So I was part of that for 2 years as a schoolboy. You know, I always say this: I wasn't the best, but you know, I'd always try my best. You know, I'd always work hard to do the right things. Quite hard on myself at times as well, but got through the 2 years as a schoolboy. Got taken on as an apprentice with Charlton. Had the opportunity to go to West Ham as well, but turned that down because I felt that I needed to be loyal to Charlton. Spent 2 years as an apprentice, 2 years as pro. I was only two of 40 who, from the age of 14 to 18, only one or two who received a professional contract. So that was quite a big achievement. I made my league debut the following year, or no, that same season, I think, and man of the match live on TV, amazing start. Played 6 more games and then got released by Charlton, which was a devastating blow in terms of when you're that first feeling of rejection, you know, and what do you do next was really a big moment in my life. But I did get taken on by a club called Barnet, who were 2 divisions lower or 3 divisions lower. So it was the bottom of so it's League 2, the lowest league. But in the years that I was at Barnet, you know, I grew up. I was playing men's football. I was playing against seasoned pros. I was playing against guys who had great careers but were coming down the ladder. You know, who knew all the tricks. So I had to grow up very quickly. You know, and it was a struggle. I was struggling with lots of different things, self-doubt, you know, performance, because you always judge, you know, so you always knew you had to perform, and dealing with these things mentally without giving anything away that you're nervous or scared is quite a big act to play. But I got through it. I got moved to Reading, who were in the Championship at the time. It was a bigger move. Moved out of London with my wife and children, and spent 3 years there. Weren't the 3 best years in terms of football. My wife's health wasn't great, so there was a lot of things going on off the pitch, and then physically for me on the pitch, it was taking a toll. I had a few injuries, but I was still able to perform when I could, and got to the end of 3 years there. Was told that I was going to get a new contract, and didn't really work out that well, so I left. Went to Portsmouth, and that was quite quiet. Early start with Tony Pulis. Within 3 months, I had Steve Claridge as manager. Within another 3 months, I had Graham Ricks as manager, and then finally ended up with Harry. And Harry got us promoted to the Premier League in 2003 as part of that squad. And then, you know, after that, as Harry likes to do, he likes to sign a player or two. And, you know, so I played alongside some great players, Paul Merson, David James, Sol Campbell, Glenn Johnson. And we ended up staying in the Premier League for 7 seasons, in which time we won the FA Cup as well. Unfortunately, I was injured for that, but what a day. And since that time, Portsmouth have been to Wembley probably another 6 times. You know, it's like Wembley's their home ground now. So yeah, so that was good. 2008 winning the FA Cup, and then 2010 I retired. But you know, some good memories, some, you know, on and off the pitch. And you know, when you obviously during this time of lockdown, there's been, you know, moments to reflect on so many different things. And I was able to reflect on looking back at my career and realizing that, what was achieved in those years, getting to the Premier League and staying in, and everything we'd done in that time was really special. But I've never been able to live in the moment of that. So reflecting back was really special for the club, for me personally, and something that I now know that there's a small percent that are able to do that. And when you're in it, you don't think of it, but when you're looking in from the outside, you realise it's a difficult place to be, and to stay there was really, really a lot of hard work. But I know that hard work wasn't on my own. I know I had a lot of help, and but yeah, so amazing times over those years.
Amazing, mate. That's incredible. I'd love to get both of your thoughts from both of your selective view of things. I know, Linvoy, for you, whenever you were at Charlton at those early days, I remember you telling me before you were like, I think you were like 2 out of maybe 30, 40 young kids who were picked at the end. All these young kids go in, and their parents too go in with these big dreams of, my child's going to make it, or is the young kid, I'm going to make it. And then for maybe 2 out of 40 do only go through the rejection, the pain, the thought of dreams ending. I'll go to Philip first. Tell me you be around parents and young kids who have dreams and ambitions to make it big one day, and not just football but in all sports, with regards to that.
Well, it's a very difficult, because parents' expectations are sometimes, and listen, I know as a parent, I have 3 boys, and you want your children to do well, and you're excited for them when you see some talent that they have. So you hope that will go on to be something they can use in their life going forward. I think one of the things that's really important is within the sporting context is the people who are actually coaching them and the people who are receiving them, that they build in a bigger perspective in their life, and that they care for them. I think there's an old saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And within a sporting context, and this has to come from the coaches and the people who are there, if young players know that they're cared and they're loved for, and they're appreciated and they're valued, then it's much easier to have the conversation at the end of the season to say, look, Spud, we think that you'll play more football at another club, and we have spoken to 3 or 4 other clubs because we really recommend you. We think you'd be great, but we just don't think you're going to have that time here. So those are the sort of things that clubs need to do well to help people on their journey. As Linvoy knows, as I know, it's a bumpy road anyway. It's not a straight shooting path to the top. Sometimes you have to go somewhere sidewards or a step backwards to go 3 steps forward. And it's important that you always leave that young person with a sense of you can still make it to the top. But what you're saying purely at your club right at that particular point is, I don't think. But if you do it in love and you do it with care and they know you care about you, it's an easier conversation to have. I'm sure that's the same across lots of sports. Sport it's a very tough place to try and make it. Linvoy knows that better than I do, but it's very challenging, and you do need people around you to help you on that journey. And it's not. Sometimes people say you can't be soft for players. You have to tell them about that. But there's also a time to actually introduce those conversations about how tough it is, and it's when they're a little bit older. So not easy. We all love sport. We know how tough it is. But again, communication and people understanding the journey that's ahead for a young player is critical within a club.
What about you, Linvoy?
Yeah, I think my passion really is for a holistic development of young men. Like Phil has said, the expectation of parents is high, and when you go into that industry, your mental toughness has to be there. But one of the things that I speak to a number of coaches, and one of the things that the pressure that comes on their doorstep is to produce the next best thing, but you can't produce one player without being in a team. So they, deep down, they know that a number of these players aren't good enough to go again, but they need a team for the ones or two that can. So there is something there. There has to be a duty of care that that allows those young boys to develop other areas in their lives as well, whether that's social skills, because of if you're taking your team away somewhere and you're going to a restaurant and they've got your badge on, there's an expectation because the badge you're wearing carries weight. So if you misbehave or bring that badge into a bad light, that's not good. So these things, these learning these things are really good skills for if you don't stay in football. They're skills that are transferable into real life, because the football bubble is a real, it's make believe in terms of you can't see it, but it's real, because when you're in there, it's like it can be like the best day at Disney, or it could be the worst rainy day at Disney, and it can change. I remember, I won't name the player because he doesn't know I'm going to tell his story, but I remember there was a player that used to come into training, and he had unbelievable ability. He could win a game in a moment, but he was so volatile. And I used to think to myself, when he leaves his house and he comes in, and something might happen, it kicks off, he walk off the training pitch and go home. I think to myself, I'd be thinking, how could you set out not knowing what sort of how you're going to come home in terms of the anger or the disruption and stuff like that. And I used to think, oh man, you got to take this serious. You really got to take this serious. So with it all, there's lots of ups and downs. It is bumpy, but I call it life. It is life. Life happens no matter what job you do. But it's how you cope. And I think, like you said, Phil, coaches, managers have got a duty of care that for that time that they're under, their watch, as to say, try and make the best young men you can, so that when they go elsewhere, somebody will turn around and say, that's such and such player, because of the way they carry themselves, the way the professionalism and stuff, because they know that whoever's had them before installed some good values, some good things that can go into a dressing room and be okay. So yeah, it's a tough world, it's a tough place, but if you're in it, don't be surprised. And I think that's what happens. A lot of people get surprised how tough it is when you're in there.
Linvoy, just from me, I think everything you shared there is absolutely brilliant. It's really insightful what you've said. I think the whole piece of a young player being at a club and as you say, the role models that are there, the coaches, the people around them, having that bigger perspective that actually they're actually helping them on their journey to being a man. I mean, that's what you're really, I mean, as a parent, I feel like even taking a parent, you're trying to prepare your children to become men or women in the other sense. So I often hear the word, or the term is sport is a microcosm of life itself. And if that is true, then it has the possibility for both the best things to happen and the worst things to happen, just like you're expressing about the things as well. And the difficulty is with that, but when you're telling a young player, if you tell a young player that, he's too young to actually understand what you're telling him, because all he's thinking about is playing well in the next game, etc. So it's finding the right way to introduce that you're actually acquiring a lot of life skills, which are going to help you whether you become a professional sports person or not. They're going to help you within the game, and they're going to help you beyond the game. And if you don't make it in the game, they're going to help you as well. And also parents to understand it, because it is a wonderful learning experience being a sports person, very unique. But it's finding the right sort of time and tools to share that with everybody. But no, brilliant what you said, big man. It was really insightful for me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Linvoy, tell us about you shared there briefly about the ups and downs of professional football, going from club to club, moving with your family from here to there. there's a reason why we're calling these Sunday nights, you know, these recordings that we're doing, audience of one, you know, because there has to come that point where, as you've experienced it probably more than anyone, you know, where you've got the press on your back, the fans, the manager, the coaches, your other teammates, you know, constantly, as Philip said, that micro bubble almost of, you know, pressure. At what point for you did it get to the point where you realized that you can't please everybody, and there had to be a point where you live for a higher purpose?
I think, you know, I probably started that journey when I was 20. The first time I was told by Charlton that I could leave the club, I was probably searching for the satisfaction of what life will give me going forward, because, you know, outside of football, friends and family would call me a footballer, because that's what I'd done from school through to 20 years old. So what's that, 4 years? So I was now a footballer because that's all they'd seen me or heard about me. So as a 20-year-old, when you're told you're not at that, you're not wanted by that club, all of a sudden your identity is gone. Literally, you know, walking out the manager's office and walking, you know, to your car. It's like, now what? Because unfortunately, the press allows, and, you know, let's call it media, allows this vision of, once you've become a footballer, 18 years old, you'll earn 120 grand a week, and you know, you're gonna have the flashiest cars, the flashiest watches, you're gonna have all this stuff, but little do they know, or if they do know, then they don't want to talk about it too much, is that 92 teams, obviously 91 now, but 92 teams in the league, only 20 play in the Premier League, and 20 teams in the Premier League, and not every player that's in that Premier League is on, you know, 120 grand a week, you know, and a lot of them are paid well, which is great, and, you know, that's what they can command, that's great, but not everybody is on that amount of money. And the average career now lasts about 8 years. So the reality of that, I was a 20-year-old, I had no right to command another club because I hadn't proved myself enough. And that was really hard, because you're looking around for help, but you don't want to show that you're weak. You know, you inside, everything's like, no, you know, it's all over. What am I going to tell people? I was a young dad. How am I going to look after my son? You know, and all that. And I hadn't even grown up yet. You know, that was the thing. I was 20 years old. You think you're grown up. I hadn't. So emotionally, I didn't know how to deal with that. And there was a chaplain, funny enough, there was a chaplain called Steve Bridge at Charlton, who I avoided like the plague, because, you know, but the reason why, because faith and sport don't go together, you know, because in that dressing room, Phil, you know, man, some things get spoken about that we could never talk about. Spud, you'd know that, you know, there's things that are spoken about that, you know, if you walked into that dressing room now, it'd be like, wow, this is shocking. But when you're in it, you're in it. But you can't, you know, in that you have to be a macho man and all that sort of stuff. So that was hard. And I think by the time I got to 27, 28, with my wife's illness, I asked this question: there must be more to life than this, because the sport that I loved was showing me so many bad sides. And the way I describe it, it's like the dark side of the moon. You see the nice reflective bit, you know, the night sky and the moon full and bright, but what's going on the other side? And that's what football's like, you know, there's a bright side that looks brilliant, but what's going on the other side? So I asked that question: there must be more to life than this. And then within 18 months, I'm now at Portsmouth, been invited to church, and, you know, and I heard the message for the first time about, you know, the gospel. I heard the message of Jesus. I heard the message of God's great rescue plan, and for the first time, life started to make sense. I heard it, but I didn't make a decision to do anything about it, but just like there was some sort of order coming. And so I invested that Christian faith a bit more, my wife and myself. And after 6 weeks, I decided that, you know what I could see in people in the congregation and a couple of my teammates who were Christians, I could see peace in their eyes. And probably without me knowing, I was chasing peace through sport, because it brought a happiness, it brought a challenge, it brought the ups and downs and everything like that. And I was probably looking for peace through that. But in the end, you know, it wasn't until I met Jesus and accepted what he'd done on the cross for me that I knew real peace. But it wasn't a light switch. It didn't happen overnight, but something happened internally, because people were looking at me saying, Lynn, you look different. You know, you don't look, you know, there's something different in your face. And I used to joke and say, yeah, it's just the moisturizer, you know, it's just the oil of Ulay. and that's when, you know, that's when it's changed, things changed for me. 28 years old, that's when I describe it, that's when my real life started.
Amazing. And how did that adapt then and connect then with your everyday life then? Playing as a footballer and as a father?
To be honest, I thought I was going to be a secret Christian, because I thought I can't tell the lads that I'm going to church because they will hammer me. But obviously I knew my teammate, Darren Moore, you know, he's a big old boy, 6'4", you know, built like anything. And he was a Christian. And the nice thing I could do with him, when we used to play away games, we used to room together. So I used to ask him questions, and because I wasn't convinced that just saying a little prayer, acknowledging what Jesus done for me on the cross, would allow me to have a relationship, you know, with God. And I couldn't quite believe that. So I'd ask Darren questions, and he'd open his Bible and he'd answer the questions, and it got a bit heavy, and I'd be like, oh, cheers, Mauro, that's great, you know, because I couldn't really tell him that I was bored, you know. So, but then I thought, right, I've asked him questions, so I'm going to ask the guys in church the same questions. And they had the same answers as Darren, and that wound me up. It really wound me up, because I thought Darren must be phoning them and telling them what questions to ask, to answer, because of what I was going to ask. But obviously he didn't know them. And then, you know, eventually there was a moment where my knee was healed. Darren and the chaplain were praying for me. Knee was healed instantly, and you know, and I felt the power of God. That's the only way I can describe it. You know, I know now it was the Holy Spirit, and when I tell you that I've searched for peace everywhere, at that moment those guys were praying for me. There was peace. It was like the world had stopped, and all the concerns and everything like that had gone, washed away, and I can describe it as love, but love, you know, can look different and feel different. But what was happening at that moment was God showing me that the peace that I'd been looking for could only be found in him. And after that, I ran with it, man. I just ran with it. And what I mean by that, I took ownership of my Christian faith through difficult times, being told that I could leave the club at Portsmouth, dropped from the team, players giving me a lot of stick. But the good thing I had around me were my church family, because they became our friends. Never had real friends. When I say real friends, it sounds going to sound harsh, but the friends in London were our real friends, because they accepted us as we were without anything else. The friends we were starting to meet after we moved outside of London wanted to know the footballer, and then everything else that came with it. So we were really guarded. But with the church family, it was they didn't care that I played football. They were more concerned that Trish and the kids were well, and then me, which was lovely. And then through that, dealing with the stick for the players, that, you know, the chaplain was brilliant. He was a former player, understood the culture of the dressing room, would give me gold dust, you know, give me verses from the Bible about certain things. And, And you've got to realise, as a young Christian, I'm a bit sceptical. You know, when Harry said I could leave the club, he gave the chaplain gave me a verse from Colossians. You know, do whatever you do, do it. You know, do it for God. I thought, what's that mean? That's a load of, you know, in my head, I thought that ain't gonna work. And he said, Lynn, just play for an audience of one. Don't worry about God. Don't worry about God. Don't worry about Harry. Don't worry about the fans. Don't worry about your teammates. Just play for the one that gave you the gift. And by doing that, Harry said I could stay at the club after a couple of weeks. Then I'm not in the team, then I get in the team, stay in the team. And what was evident for everybody else around was I spoke loads about my Christian faith, and it normally fell on deaf ears. But what they couldn't argue with was the transformation on the pitch, because they saw consistent performances and things like that. But what I was able to do through those performances, I knew I'd be interviewed. So because I could say exactly what's happening, I would say to the journalist, I play for God. So they start to write, Linvoy says Harry Redknapp's God. And I'm like, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said, I'm a born again Christian, and I play with real peace, because my Father in heaven loves me, whether I win the game, lose the game, or draw the game. I've never experienced that in my entire life, where I wasn't judged on my performance. So to have a Father in heaven that loved me anyway, of course you're going to go out on that pitch and play with a freedom. You know, playing against some great teams, United, Liverpool, I can't even think about them two at the moment, but playing against some great teams, and realistically should be so fearful of what could be coming the other way. But, you know, I just said, Lord, this game's for you, this performance is for you. If kicking it in row Z means it's a good decision that I've made, but it doesn't please everybody, I don't care, because God, you love me. And that's when that change from 28 through to 35 years old allowed me to play the best football I'd ever played. And believe me, guys, all I used to do is head the ball and kick it. That was it. And run quite quick. But but sometimes that's what's needed. You can have all the flair and everything like that, but sometimes it's just let's just do the basics well, and that's God's grace that allowed me to have some years in the Premier League.
I mean, that's incredible. And I know you long enough to know that you're even quite shy about speaking about some of the things that the accolades that you received, even whenever you stopped playing, but I am going to ask you, because I do think that's a testament of the attitude that you had throughout your whole career. And it's a bit of God's blessing on you too, saying, you know what, Lynn, well done, boy. You're my boy, kind of a thing. Yeah. Tell us about some of those from Portsmouth, and also the chance to get an invitation to the Palace.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny when you're playing and you're giving Man of the Match awards or Player of the Year awards. They do mean a lot, but you don't rest on that. It's a strange thing, Phil. You'll know this. That saying, you're only as good as your last game, or and the tiny bits people will pick at, even if you've had Man of the Match, they say, oh, what about when you've done that? So there'll be always a negative, and I think personally, I used to really highlight my errors and focus on my errors, and rather than enjoy the moment of being Man of the Match or everything like that. But it was a blessing, because in that promotion season, from being told that I'm not wanted at the club to then being told I'm wanted, I'm going to be on the bench, and then in the first game, player gets injured, then I'm in the team from the start of the season right the way through to the end. I think I missed a couple of games through sickness, and then winning Player of the Year, but not just from our fans, but fans around the country. And there was accolade upon accolade upon accolade. But I was able, it was great, because it was such an easy platform to just say, you know what, you might think that I was good, but what's better is this, and I'll be able to just speak normally about being a Christian and how it works in the dressing room. And then, you know, going on a few more years, past retirement, yeah, I got awarded the MBE, and whatever I'd done in my years at Pompey off the pitch was always to help other people. You know, my thought process, try and encourage other people, try and let them see that, you know, Christianity, the church, the people, the church building, and the congregation, that they're normal people. So I always saw myself as an opportunity for Christians to engage with their community in an easy way, without it being, oh, people in that church, but they got two heads, and you know, they go and sing and everything like that. But when they saw that, as you know, myself and other people were just normal, but we, you know, we've got love and we've got hope in Jesus Christ, people were drawn to that. So to receive that MBE was a shock, was, you know, totally unexpected. And interestingly enough, the guy that nominated me, he had to get lots of letters from lots of different people. You know, he said, "You deserve it." And I said, "Well, actually, I don't feel that I do." He said, "You do. You don't realise how many lives you've impacted." And I made this promise when I was 15 years old. I made a promise, and I said, and it was probably a prayer without me really knowing who God was. I said that if I ever made it, I'd come back to London and give something back to where I grew up, to disadvantaged kids. Well, I never ever made it back to London. All that work took place in Portsmouth, and yeah, and it's quite amazing. And I use that MBE. I don't do it as much now because I don't really go into schools as much because of time and stuff. But I use the MBE to show the young people that where I grew up, the environment screamed that you will fail. It screamed, you will fail. But I said to them, look, I'm little Linvoy from Stratford, East London, lived in the 17th floor of a block of flats. The world told me I was going to fail, but look, if I can do it, you can do it, you know, and that's what I use it for. So you reminded me that I've got an MBE. I forget, I honestly forget, but I do, when the opportunity comes to share about it, I talk about this is something that is achievable for a number of people in a number of different ways. And yeah, and bless God, you know, it's down to him. It's down to him, totally down to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Philip, tell us a wee bit more about what Sports Chaplaincy does, because I know it's a thing close to my heart, and it's a thing close to Linvoy's heart. Obviously, it played a key role in his career and the support network, but being part of a, you know, I've been there where you're part of a group of guys that meet regularly in a club and get into the Word and pray with each other and hold each other to account in our faith and encourage each other to go deeper in God and the adventures of that. Tell us a wee bit more about it, and also if someone's on tonight and they're listening and think they're maybe used to be involved in sport, some place that maybe love to get involved, how they can get involved in that.
Sure. I mean, first to say, Linvoy, what a tremendous story and what a tremendous witness you have been, and to everybody. And you know, God's really used you wonderfully in football. And as you rightly say, yours a great story, but it's a real story. It's a story of the ups and downs of being a footballer. So well done. It was wonderful listening to you. Sports Chaplaincy is. I mean, an organisation that's been around for quite a while. We're predominantly involved in football, but also involved in increasingly more sports. So rugby, hockey, cycling. We're involved a lot with gymnasiums now as well, cricket, golf, a whole bunch of other sports now becoming more and more part of the Sports Chaplaincy family. So a chaplain, just to sort of frame a chaplain, because sometimes there's some misunderstanding around all of that. A chaplain is there to really just journey and do life with people at a football club. They're there to have a presence. They're there as a safe port of call. They have no, they're not on committees. They're not on boards. They're not nothing to do with selection of teams. They are there to care for everybody at the club, and that's a good thing to have. I think what you got to remember in the sporting context, there's a statistic out there that says that 41% of employees would tell their employers if they had any difficulties in life. If you put that into a sporting context, and a dressing room that Linvoy's already alluded to, where you're expected to be mentally tough, resilient, not weak of mind, strong. It's not a place where you typically are going to go and talk to your teammates or your coach or your manager or trainer or backroom staff about some of the difficulties you're encountering. Those may be related to sport, but very often they're not. George Best was actually quoted very recently in an interview he did in the mid-80s with Gerald Williams, and he said that very thing. He said, players, he said, have no one to turn to. He said you really need somebody just outside of that whole normal club setting. And the football side of things, where you can actually have someone to talk to. So the truth is that for most sports people, we always say they're just normal people. You know, they are normal people who've got normal feelings, but they are in a slightly unnormal or unusual environment where performance is key. They're expected to stay fit, train, get 3 points on a Saturday, and repeat. And if that doesn't happen, the world can start to feel crumbling down around them. And it can affect all of the other things around their life. There may be other things in their lives that are affecting their football performance. So the need for a chaplain is become one that's very much increasing. And a chaplain is a safe protocol. The chaplains will all be people with particular skill sets. Will be people who will understand they'll be good, non-judgmental listening ears. And sometimes that's really just enough for some people, someone just to listen to. There'll be also people who will have wisdom, be able to provide advice about all manner of things. They'll be also be able to signpost if there's issues around addiction or that type of thing, if you've got issues with family. We have other organisations with specific specialist skills that we can signpost to. But the chaplain is increasingly an important part. And I think the chaplain is now becoming more aware of the psychology of sport and what is going on. And I think it's a wise thing for the sports scientists and the coaches of clubs to realise that the chaplain may have a very, very small part to play, but it might be the little missing piece in the jigsaw for some player to get to the performance level, because typically coaches and managers are saying, I need you to perform well. But the chaplain, I'll give you an example. There was a player at a club recently where the family they lost a child late in the pregnancy, and the manager and the coach and the backroom staff, they need the player fit and on the pitch. He's a key player in the team. He's a X amount of £1 million asset. So who do they turn to? They turn to the chaplain, because the chaplain is able to empathise through the whole situation and talking through it. And he's not concerned about getting them on the pitch. He's concerned about loving and caring for him through that. But out of that, the player realises that's actually the club who are caring for them, because the chaplain's part of the club, and he feels that, and the family feels that. So it's important. There's so many things that the chaplains can do within a club. I would say to anybody who is thinking of anybody who's a follower out there of Jesus and who loves Jesus and who wants to get involved in their community. And I want to say this: you don't have to be, you don't have to love sport or be nuts about sport. You have to be nuts about Jesus and nuts about people. You know, that's what you need to. Those are the skills you need to have. Be a good listener. We can provide all the training for you. The setting at every club is a little bit different. So the expectations of how often you're there or when you're there will be determined somewhat between you and the club. But we have a lot of opportunities for people right now to get involved. We've got 27 of the top 35 clubs in Northern Ireland, all with chaplains in football. We've just had 5 rugby clubs this year who have all appointed chaplains of clubs. The Northwest Cricket Union have just endorsed this, and we've appointed 4 chaplains in their league up there. And we're increasingly now, there's more chaplains coming in on the female side of the game, disability side of the game, amateur side of the game. So we want to be able to serve everybody, and not just in Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland as well. That's somewhere we definitely want to go. And obviously, hopefully, as I get more time to do that, we can go there. So we're really excited about it. It's an opportunity as well for chaplains to just engage. It's an opportunity for, by the way, I should say that chaplains are not always ordained ministers. That's also a perception.
Mm.
Ordained ministers come with particular skill sets. They're trained to care for the pastoral needs of people in their community and their spiritual needs. But typically, we also have a lot of chaplains now who are just guys who do other things. We've got some of them are joiners, some of them are electricians, some of them work in other professional work. Those guys are also critically important too. So as chaplains, so they provide another range of skills. Some of those guys actually are coming from a sporting background themselves. Maybe some of them organically actually were in the club in another role, former players, former administrators in the club, and also all of a sudden realize I still have a role to play here. And it's a role about caring for people and loving people. That's what it is. We're there to love people. And in a world of, I think some of the things that Linvoy highlighted there is your identity. Mm-hmm. There's that's an issue because you become identified as, you could say, I was a gymnast from 6 years old. I've been a gymnast all my life. If I'm not a gymnast, who am I? That's a question people ask. They say, and we have to remember that we need to prepare people. Chaplains can build in perspective so that they realize there's a bigger identity who they are. They're someone who loves playing football. They're not identified solely as a footballer. So identity is an issue within sport, and our chaplains can help with that. The second thing is there's an enormous amount of uncertainty around sport, no matter how well you're going. And the third one is injury. Most players whose careers were finished there early or who had long layoffs with injury will say they never thought that was coming. They thought they were invincible. And it's just the smallest thing can happen that actually, so there's so many things there around identity, uncertainty and injury that again, chaplains are in a position to provide perspective in those situations and to be a good listening ear and to sometimes provide really good practical advice and wisdom, sometimes to work in signposts with other organisations, and also work in with the rehab staff at a club as well when there's an injury, because again, a lot of it is here. There's in terms of the healing of the injury too. So we're really excited. Anybody out there who's interested, just connect with me. My email is ireland@sportschaplaincy.org.uk. Just drop me an email. We've got some training coming up online. We've got a new season coming up, and we'd love to have you come and join us.
Amazing. I've got one final question for Linvoy, and then I've got one question for both of you just as we're finished. Linvoy, tell us maybe even some of your own experiences and your own thoughts around everything that's happening in our world at the moment with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's so sad that it took something so horrific to bring this properly into the spotlight.
Yeah, it's I think obviously the images of George Floyd going round the world shocked people, because I think, there was, in my head, I saw the amazing side of humanity through the coronavirus, and then there started to be a little change where there was a bit of finger pointing, politically. There's a bit of finger pointing, accusations, and lies, that were obvious, and things like that, and you just saw glimpses of mankind. And I think with the Black Lives Matter, the protests and everything like that, this has been 400 or 500 years of build up, but I think for the first time you saw unity in regards to human beings. It's not skin color, it's not size, it's not hair or anything like that. It's how can one human being do that to another human being? So I think in some way, it's sad that it's happened. Some of the reactions have been, not the best, but on the majority, it's been peaceful, but it's made a huge impact. And to see football, what we've seen over the last couple of games, where footballers and everybody involved taking a knee, and obviously showing appreciation to the NHS as well. I think it's come a point now where actually this can't be ignored. So for me, watching it, there were some uncomfortable moments, You know, even my thinking and the things that I've learned and heard over the weeks, even I was uncomfortable because, you know, my parents shielded me from anything like that. There'd be odd things said that you sort of just say, oh, you know what, they're ignorant. You just wave them off and don't let it affect you. Don't show that it affects you. That same sort of thing, Phil, where you don't show no weakness in the dressing room. You know, when someone taunts you, you don't let them get in. You don't let them affect you. So there were little bits like that. But, you know, even for me, it was uncomfortable watching and hearing some of the stories of what people have gone through. You know, there's a time for change. And lots of people have said that, you know, coming into lockdown, they were a certain way. Coming out of lockdown, they'll be different from how they went in. And I think with Black Lives Matters that, okay, it's you know, it is about Black lives at this moment, but forget that. Wider than that, there's where there's injustice. That's the bottom line. Where there's injustice, I think more people are saying, right, that's enough. That's enough. No more injustice. And this crosses many, many things now. So it's a shame, but there was going to come a point where there's going to be an overspill, and this is it. Now it's time for the people who can make decisions, who are in those seats, to make some decisions that show, before we start pointing fingers elsewhere, what we're doing on our own backyard, you know. So hopefully, I know some guys who are at that sort of level, who some big conversations, really big conversations over the last few weeks, and you know, and we'll see it, but I think there was always going to be an overspill at some time.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully there'll be, you know, something positive going forward. I'm sure there will. I'm sure what's happened, people won't allow anything like that to happen, and people won't be punished for it. We don't want injustice. That's the bottom line.
Here, man. Absolutely. With you 100%. Final question for both of you, and thank you both for being with us tonight. You know, I know we're recording this beforehand because it's a very special day of the year. It's Father's Day when this goes out. And we're all fathers here, and you know, I think even just listening to you both just over this last hour, you know, sharing your stories and your heart, from my perspective, what we're trying to do here at CVM Ireland is consistently reach men. That's men who are watching this who don't yet have the faith. We want to help you understand that, and like Linvoy, work through that, of what that really means, that we can get you to the point where you want to give your life to Jesus. And it's also taking Christian guys to help them fully walk in their true identity as sons of God, and what everything that means. But there's such a big thing going on, I think, in the world too, that not very many people like to talk about, and it is a fatherlessness epidemic. And I know sport plays, you've already highlighted this and what we've talked about already, sport plays a key role in mentoring and fathering young kids, young boys, young girls who don't have that father's voice, because we all know what it's like to look up to your hero coach or the hero player, and for that moment of them to turn around and go, do you know what, kid, well done, and your whole world just lights up because a mentor, a father figure in your life believes in you. And as fathers yourselves, what would you like to share just as we kind of close this out before we head into our further Zoom call with the rest of the guys?
I'll go first. I'll Linvoy wrap it up. I think it's something very close to my heart, the whole thing of being a father. But I lost my dad at 18, and I had a world-class father, and I'm grateful for the 18 years I had him. Younger brother Keith only had him for 13 years, and Colin was a couple of years older than me. It was a massive void when we lost my dad, and I think on my journey after that, you became a bit thick-skinned and tougher because he wasn't around, and you missed him, and he became a bit battle-hardened. And it was only, honestly, in the last maybe 6 years or so that I have really recognized that I have a heavenly father. I obviously haven't been a Christian from a young age. You talk to God, you talk about your Heavenly Father, you talk about Jesus, you talk about the Holy Spirit, but that recognition that actually, as Max Lucado says in his book, that we're God's kids first. So whether your experience has been like mine, very good and yet robbed, whether you still have your father around for many years, whether you've had a very bad experience with a father or had no father at all, the one thing I would say to everybody, we're all God's kids first. And, you know, getting back to that piece about identity and even what Linvoy was saying there about the current racism issues, we're all made in the image of God, all of us, and we're all loved by God. And that is something to hold dear in your heart, that actually, and for a lot of people actually, the not having a father or not having a good experience with a father has had implications on their lives. There's no question about that. But what I would like to say is that you have a Heavenly Father who loves you beyond anything you can ever imagine. There is nothing that will transform your life more like a friendship with God, because He helps you to settle with the past, engage with the present, embrace the future. He deals with your why you're here, and He deals with your destiny, everything. And again, nothing brings that peace, the value to your life, that you are valuable, that you are important, that you do matter, like that friendship with God. So that's what I'd like to say.
That's lovely, man. That is, I echo that. I'm not saying no more. No, that's beautiful. I think, you know, as you were saying that, Phil, you know, I think to my dad's still with me, and I think of my relationship with him growing up, and I don't really remember my younger years, but what I do know is that there was always, you know, food on the table. There was always, you know, good clothes and all the practical things. You know, I never had to think about, because, you know, the provision was there. And it's not until, obviously, being a young dad, I've got 3 children now, and, you know, I've always thought in my head, I just want to try and be the best dad I can be. And sometimes, you know, I want to love them, you know, and just love them and squeeze them, and they don't want that anymore. You know, they don't want squeezing. You know, the youngest is 17, and he's like, Dad, don't do that. I don't want that. But I also know that love comes with a bit of discipline as well. You know, and you know, saying no is to some things is something that they don't really like, but they've got to understand it's all through love. And like you, Phil, I think my relationship with Jesus in my Christian years has been really good. My relationship with the Holy Spirit has been great. But in the last year, I wasn't too well last May for a period of time. But I now know God's love in such a different way. I know Him in His sustaining me, His provision for my family, and even though, you know, I never quite understood it before, but just coming through, you know, this period of lockdown, God's sovereignty, you know, nothing surprised Him, you know. But what I've seen, this isn't related to Father, but what I've seen is this is the most creative the world has been for, you know, at one time, because God is a creative God, and that's His gift, that's His skill, that's His, you know, and we've got that. So my thought process of Father is, I've seen provision from my dad, and I've seen it from my Heavenly Father. But, you know, loving my children the best I can is a tiny reflection of God our Father. But it's a gift that He's given, and, you know, I just try to use it well. So, and I always say this: whoever comes into my life, in terms of the role I have with Christians in sport, my role in life generally, whoever comes into my life, you know what, I'm going to love them like they're my children, because whatever time I have with those people in my life, I want them to taste, I want them to smell who Jesus is. I want them to taste who God the Father is. And if it's only little bits that allow that for someone else to pick up going forward, then that's great. But, you know, our Father in heaven loves us, and, you know, we have to love our children.
Incredible. Amen. Thanks, guys. Guys, can't thank Linvoy and Phil. Can't thank you guys enough for giving of your time so freely. I wish we had another hour. Keep talking all day.
Well done for pulling it together, mate. You know, yeah, I've known you for a long time, man, and I'm always excited when my phone rings and I see your name. I'm always excited because I know he's on something. He's onto something. So well done for your obedience and your perseverance, man. Because yeah, it's good. It's a good thing you're doing. And Phil, mate, you know, I hear so much about what you're up to, man. I'm like, oh my days, if I get in that slipstream, I can pick some little bits up. But mate, you keep pioneering, man. You keep doing what you're doing, because the ripple effect is huge. It is absolutely huge. So you guys, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Well, Linvoy, thanks for all your words of encouragement. I think I say on behalf of Spud now, I mean, I know that you guys in England who've played at the professional level, who have the stories that you have, you have an enormous ripple effect back in our little country, and we love listening to all that you're doing, and really encourage you in your journey. You're a top guy, so thank you so much.
Cheers, Phil. Thank
Absolutely.
you, man.
Yeah, here. I'd say the same. These are both incredible guys, and Linvoy, I can't wait to get you back in the Emerald Isle one day soon.
Yeah, man. I'm getting withdrawal symptoms.
Listen, guys, if you're watching this and you'd love to find out some more, chat some more with some guys about faith, about Linvoy's story, about Phil's story as well. We're going to be on a Zoom call here immediately after. You'll see it on the links below on Facebook and stuff. But from us, we're going to sign off, and we're back again next week with another special guest, which we'll let you know about later in the week. So make sure you don't miss it. It's all about an audience of one, and his name is Jesus. So in his name, we bless you, and we say we'll see you soon.